My daughter expected me to plan her wedding for free, so I gave her exactly what she paid for. I'm Robert, 58, and I've been a professional wedding planner for nearly a decade. I've dealt with all types of brides, some sweet, some nightmarishly entitled, but nothing could have prepared me for my own daughter, Lily, 28, and the absolute chaos that was her wedding. Lily has always been a bit spoiled. After her mother left us, she never really heard the word no. If she threw a tantrum, she got what she wanted. If she messed up, I made excuses for her. I was both mother and father, and perhaps I overcompensated. Meanwhile, I had to be the responsible one, the one who didn't cause problems, the one who sucked it up and handled everything. Over time, I learned to maintain professional boundaries, but Lily never really grew up. So when she announced her engagement to Ethan, 30, I knew deep down that it was going to be a problem for me. Lily wanted a huge, over-the-top, Instagram-worthy wedding. The issue was that she and Ethan had limited funds and no structured budget. Lily assumed she could get discounts, borrow money, and figure it all out along the way. Even worse, she fully expected me to plan the entire thing for free. It all started with a family dinner. Lily and Ethan had just gotten engaged, and I wanted to celebrate. Everyone was in a good mood, toasting to their future, when Lily turned to me with a big smile and said, "I don't even have to stress about planning, Dad's got it covered." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. She immediately launched into ideas: floral arches, chandeliers, a 5-star venue, custom bridesmaid dresses, live music. Every word out of her mouth screamed expensive. I waited for her to mention a budget, but she didn't. So I asked, "What's your budget looking like?" Lily waved her hand dismissively. "We'll figure that out later. I mean, I'm not worried since you'll be handling everything." That's when I realized she was serious. She actually thought I was going to plan her entire wedding for free. I reminded her that wedding planning is my job, it's how I pay my bills. I told her I'd be happy to help in small ways, like recommending vendors or giving advice, but I couldn't plan the whole thing for free. Lily immediately went into victim mode. "Wow, so strangers get your time, but your own daughter doesn't? I thought family was supposed to support each other." Before I could respond, my sister, her aunt, chimed in, "Oh, come on, Robert. It's her wedding. You're really going to make her pay? Just do it as a gift." I looked at Ethan, expecting him to step in, but he just sat there, awkward and silent. I stayed firm. I can't do an entire wedding for free. I can offer a discount, but I can't do it all. Lily's mood shifted instantly, her voice went sharp. "After everything you've done wrong since Mom left, after I stayed with you, after I helped you with your business," I blinked. "You mean the time you lost 3 client files because you couldn't be bothered to file them properly?" That set her off. She started going on about how selfish I was, how I didn't appreciate her, how I was ruining her wedding dreams. Of course, my family took her side. By the end of dinner, I was the villain. The next few weeks were hell. Lily refused to speak to me, but she had no problem talking about me. She posted vague messages on social media about family betrayal and how some people only care about money. Our extended family started calling and texting, telling me to just do it for her. Apparently, I was ruining her once-in-a-lifetime moment over something as silly as money. At one point, my sister actually begged me to apologize. "Just tell her you'll do it," she said. "She's under so much stress." I refused. Weeks passed, and suddenly Lily was back. She sent a cheerful text as if nothing had happened. "Hey Dad, let's grab coffee and talk wedding stuff." So excited. I knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't sorry, she just realized she couldn't plan a wedding without my help. But I decided to play along. If Lily wanted free wedding planning, she was going to get exactly what she paid for. Lily's sudden change in attitude was almost comical. After weeks of silent treatment and social media posts about fake family, she popped back up like nothing happened. She sent a text full of exclamation points, talking about how excited she was to finally start planning the wedding together. I already knew what was happening. She wasn't apologizing over her budget, then looked at me expectantly, waiting for me to fix it. I shrugged. Maybe look for a cheaper option? She was not happy. Determined to save money, she decided to DIY everything: invitations, decor, centerpieces, except she had zero artistic ability. She tried to hand paint wedding signs, but the lettering was wobbly, and the paint smeared. She attempted floral arrangements, but the flowers wilted because she didn't store them properly. She bought discount table runners that arrived wrinkled and frayed at the edges. I warned her again that some things are worth paying for. She rolled her eyes and called me negative. Then came the venue disaster. She found a place she loved and put down a non-refundable deposit without checking the contract details. 2 weeks later, she changed her mind and wanted me to fix it. I told her there was nothing to fix, the deposit was gone. That's when she started to panic. She came over, sat on my couch, and began venting about how stressful everything was. Ethan was frustrated with her, vendors weren't responding, and things were piling up. I listened, waiting for the moment she would ask for real help. Sure enough, she sighed dramatically and said, "Maybe you could just step in and take over a little." I shook my head. She stared at me, eyes wide. I reminded her again that she chose this. She was not happy. The next day, my sister called. "She's overwhelmed. Can't you just fix things for her?" I told her the same thing I had told Lily. Then came the final disaster. Lily had ignored my advice about getting contracts in writing. She assumed things were set up, but vendors weren't officially booked. One by one, they backed out. The florist was gone, the DJ booked somewhere else, and the caterer raised their price after she took too long. Lily panicked. Ethan's family had been watching in concern, and his mother finally stepped in, asking if he was sure about moving forward with this. For the first time, Ethan tried to intervene, suggesting they hire a professional last minute, but Lily snapped at him, saying it was too late. She texted me, called me, and begged me to help. I repeated the same words I had been telling her for months: "You get what you pay for." Lily had never actually confirmed a florist, she just assumed one of the vendors she spoke to was holding the date for her. They weren't. By the time she realized it, every decent florist in the area was fully booked. She panicked and started calling random places, begging for last-minute arrangements. The only ones available were either ridiculously overpriced or low-quality fake flowers. She settled on some cheap grocery store bouquets, but they barely covered half the tables. Then came the catering disaster. Lily had gone with the cheapest caterer she could find, ignoring every warning I gave her about contracts. Naturally, they backed out at the last minute. Apparently, they had double-booked the date and took the better-paying job. With just days to go, she scrambled for alternatives, but her budget was stretched. Eventually, she ended up hiring a small local restaurant to do a buffet, but they could only provide basic trays of food, nothing fancy. And then there was the dress. The dress she had to have, the one that was way over budget, finally arrived, and it didn't fit. The alterations she assumed were being done were never scheduled. She tried squeezing into it, but the zipper barely went up, and the sleeves were too long. She called the boutique, but at this point, there was no time to fix it. Her solution? Crash diet and pray. Meanwhile, I got a text from one of her bridesmaids: she was dropping out. Apparently, Lily had been making endless demands, forcing them to redo their dresses, insisting on last-minute changes, and expecting them to foot the bill for extra things. They were over it. By the end of the day, 2 more bridesmaids backed out. Lily was furious, she blamed everyone but herself. Then Ethan called me. He sounded exhausted. "I don't know what to do anymore," he admitted. "I've tried getting Lily to plan properly, but she just keeps brushing me off." He had asked his groomsmen to step in, even suggested hiring a professional at the last minute, but Lily refused to hear it. Now, with the wedding just days away, the chaos was fully sinking in. He asked me, almost pleading, to step in and help. I told him no. Lily had made it clear she didn't need a planner, she wanted to do things her way. A few hours later, my sister called, demanding that I fix things. "Your daughter is having a breakdown. Just step in, do something." I repeated the same thing I had told everyone else: you get what you pay for. Lily was still holding hadn't even happened yet. The wedding day arrived, and from the moment the sun rose, it was a disaster. Lily had chosen an outdoor venue with no backup plan, no tents, no covered areas, just an open garden. The weather forecast predicted heavy rain, and by noon, dark clouds rolled in. By the time guests started arriving, the rain poured down, and people scrambled for cover under trees, huddling under whatever umbrellas they had. The cheap, flimsy DIY decorations Lily had spent weeks working on were soaked, and the watercolor sign she painted smudged beyond recognition. Then the seating chaos began. Lily never arranged a seating chart, assuming people would just figure it out. They didn't. Guests wandered around, confused, asking where they were supposed to sit. Elderly relatives stood around awkwardly, waiting for someone to guide them. The venue staff asked who was in charge, but Lily was too busy screaming at the rain, and Ethan was nowhere to be found. Then the florist mess came to light. Lily's last-minute plan to buy discount flowers and arrange them herself fell apart. The morning of the wedding, she ran out of time, threw the flowers together in a panic, and ended up with sad, wilted, uneven bouquets. When she saw how bad they looked, she threw them on the ground in frustration. But the real disaster was the caterer. The cheap replacement she hired last minute was supposed to arrive by 3 p.m., but they didn't show. By 4 p.m., still nothing. Guests were hungry, wet, and grumpy. Lily called them, screaming into the phone. They said they were on their way, but they finally showed up at 5:30 p.m. with half the food missing. Apparently, they had another event and ran out of supplies. Now, not only were people soaked and miserable, but half of them didn't even get a meal. Meanwhile, the bridesmaids, the ones who stuck around, were done. They stood in the corner, arms crossed, refusing to lift a finger. Lily had treated them horribly for months, so now they let her sink. Lily's meltdown was building, and then my sister snapped. She burst into tears in front of everyone, complaining loudly about how she couldn't believe this was happening and how all of Lily's dreams were ruined. People stared. Then came the venue manager. They pulled Lily aside, explaining that the event had gone completely off schedule, and because she didn't communicate anything, the staff had no idea what was happening. They were threatening to cut the night short if things didn't get organized immediately. Meanwhile, Ethan's family watched in horror. His parents sat at their table, whispering to each other, looking beyond uncomfortable. His mother, at one point, shook her head in disbelief. Then came Lily's dress disaster. It still didn't fit, the zipper barely stayed up. She kept tugging at it, fuming that it was too late to fix. Her solution? Pinning the back together with safety pins. By now, guests were checking their watches, some were already leaving, grumbling about the rain, the missing food, and the lack of music. Speaking of music, no DJ had been booked. Lily thought I would handle that, but I didn't. Her backup plan, a Bluetooth speaker, failed halfway through the night when the music randomly stopped, and nobody knew how to fix it. By now, guests were whispering about how bad everything was. Then came the final humiliation. People started taking photos and posting them on social media, pictures of the ruined decorations, the empty buffet tables, and the bridesmaids standing off to the side, refusing to help. It was all over Instagram and Facebook before the night even ended. Lily was livid. She stormed up to me, blaming me for everything, the vendors, the weather, the food, the guests leaving early. Apparently, it was all my fault. I didn't react, I just repeated the same thing I had been saying for months. This is what a free planner gets you. Ethan remained silent, but I saw it in his face, the realization, the regret. At that moment, I knew this wedding wasn't just a disaster, this marriage wasn't going to last. The wedding was over, but the real fallout had just begun. Lily and Ethan had planned a honeymoon at a luxury beach resort in Mexico, except there was one problem: Lily couldn't afford it. Between all the last-minute vendor replacements, the overpriced food, and the rushed DIY disasters, she had burned through whatever little budget she had. She tried to move things around, but the resort wouldn't refund the deposit, and there wasn't enough money left for flights, activities, or even the hotel balance. So instead of sipping cocktails by the ocean, Lily spent the first week of her marriage sulking at home. Ethan barely spoke to her. By the second week, he started pulling away. The caption read, "DIY isn't for everyone," and then someone, no one knows who, uploaded a full breakdown of the disaster to a wedding Facebook group. People ate it up. Complete strangers were commenting, laughing, and calling it the worst wedding story they had ever heard. Lily, mortified, went into damage control mode, trying to rewrite history. She told people it wasn't her fault, the vendor scammed her, the weather betrayed her, the guests were ungrateful, and of course, her favorite excuse, I sabotaged her. At least that's what she told my sister. While Lily was drowning in embarrassment, I was getting calls from people who had been at the wedding. Ethan's cousins, some of them engaged, had friends who now wanted to hire a real planner, me. Even some old classmates who heard the story through the grapevine reached out. My business was gaining some unexpected attention. Ethan had seen it all firsthand. He knew how reckless she had been, how disorganized, and how quick she was to blame everyone but herself. Slowly, he checked out. At first, it was small things. He stopped engaging in conversations, left the house more, and stopped tagging Lily in posts. Then the real signs started showing. He canceled plans with her, spent weekends at his parents' house, and one day, he finally admitted it, he wasn't sure if he wanted to be married anymore. Lily lost it. She begged, she screamed, and she tried to guilt him into staying, but Ethan was done. 1 month after the wedding, he moved out. 2 months later, he filed for divorce. Lily spiraled. She called everyone she could, trying to get people on her side, her aunt still defending her, while I remained silent. Extended family avoided her, people had seen too much. The tension boiled over when Lily's financial nightmare hit full force. It turned out she had taken out multiple loans for the wedding, maxed out credit cards, and completely drained her savings. She came to me, begging for help. At first, my sister tried to reason with me, saying Lily had been through a lot. When I refused, she hesitated before finally relenting. "Lily, we've done everything we could for you. It's time to fix this yourself," she said, though her voice was softer than firm. Lily lost it again. She started blaming everyone, the vendors, the guests, me, and of course, Ethan. Meanwhile, Ethan's parents weren't blind to what was happening. They sat him down for a talk, the kind of talk that makes someone rethink their entire life. They pointed out how reckless Lily was, how she had burned bridges with friends, how her social media meltdowns weren't a good look, and how maybe, just maybe, this was a sign that their marriage was a huge mistake. Then, out of nowhere, Ethan reached out to me. It wasn't a long conversation, just a simple, almost defeated message, "You were right." Lily, meanwhile, was in full-blown damage control mode. She told everyone Ethan was emotionally abusive, that he had changed after the wedding, that he wasn't being supportive of her financial struggles, and of course, she found a way to blame me. Apparently, I had set her up for failure. That's when things got worse. The wedding disaster went viral. Some wedding guest wrote a post on Reddit titled, "The Worst Wedding I've Ever Attended." It blew up, thousands of people read it. The comments dragged Lily. People laughed at the lack of food, the rain disaster, the Bluetooth speaker playlist, and the fact that her own bridesmaids abandoned her. Lily saw it. At first, she tried to downplay it, laughing it off as exaggerated rumors, but as more people commented, she began scrambling for control. She posted long-winded explanations, painting herself as a victim of bad luck and sabotage, but few bought it. No names were mentioned, but everyone knew who she was talking about. Then the final nail in the coffin, Ethan discovered that Lily had taken out a loan in his name. She had lied to him, using his information to get extra money for the wedding. That was it. Ethan filed for divorce just 6 weeks after the wedding. He had also spoken to a lawyer about the loan Lily had taken out in his name, and while he couldn't handle the marriage, he had grounds to sue for fraud. Lily was shattered. She showed up drunk at my house, screaming and crying about how everyone was against her. My sister called me, pleading with me to talk to Ethan and convince him to stay. I didn't even respond. Meanwhile, Lily tried to win Ethan back. She love-bombed him with grand gestures, long messages, and promises that she would change, but Ethan was already done. While her life crumbled, mine was thriving. The viral wedding disaster story actually brought business my way. People started reaching out, even reported the fake accounts. One review even said, "If this is about that wedding, I was there, and trust me, it wasn't the father's fault." Lily's plan backfired, but she wasn't done. My sister got involved again, pushing the family angle. "Your daughter's struggling, you should forgive her. Why are you being so cold?" I ignored it. Then I did something that completely shut down Lily's version of events. I wrote my own post, no drama, no name-calling, just a timeline of what really happened. I explained how I warned Lily from the start, how she ignored all advice, how she treated people terribly, and how she tried to destroy my career afterward. It blew up. People started sharing it, commenting on it, and supporting me. Lily went silent, well, for about a week. Then she tried to pull the sympathy card. She started a GoFundMe titled "Starting Over After Betrayal." She wrote a dramatic story about how she was left with nothing and how certain people had turned against her. It got zero traction, not a single donation. Meanwhile, real life hit her hard. She had slacked off at work during the wedding chaos, constantly leaving early to handle last-minute issues. Her boss warned her twice, and after she missed an important deadline for the third time, they let her go. She called my sister again, looking for money, looking for sympathy, and for the first time ever, my sister told her no. "Lily, we've done everything we could for you. It's time to fix this yourself," she said, though her voice was softer than firm. Lily panicked. She tried to reach out to Ethan, but he blocked her. Then she called me, crying and begging, saying she had nowhere to turn. I let it go to voicemail. In the end, she had no choice but to move back home. I let her stay, but only under strict conditions, no handouts, no endless complaining. She had to get a job and start fixing her mess. Lily went quiet. People avoided her, friends distanced themselves. She was the cautionary tale now, and while her life collapsed, mine took off. The viral wedding disaster got me noticed. A high-profile client reached out with a budget more than Lily's entire wedding cost. My business was thriving, and Lily watched from the sidelines. Then, out of nowhere, she tried befriending me again, acting sweet, as if she wanted to rebuild our relationship. I knew exactly what she wanted: money. I looked at her and said, "You get what you pay for," and then I walked away. Lily was broke, unemployed, and alone. My daughter finally hit rock bottom, and this time, no one was there to catch her. She spent weeks sulking at my house, avoiding reality, waiting for someone to bail her out like they always had, but that day never came. I stopped paying for her expenses. At first, Lily thought it was temporary, that if she threw a big enough tantrum, I would cave. But instead of giving in, I stood firm. No more handouts, no more excuses. Lily had to figure it out on her own. That meant getting a job. She tried applying to different places, but every time, her attitude got in the way. She expected management positions despite having no real experience. She demanded higher pay while burning bridges in her industry. She hopped from interview to interview, but nobody wanted to deal with someone entitled and unreliable. Then came the final blow: she found out Ethan had moved on, not just dating, but actually happy. A few months after leaving Lily, he met someone new, someone put together, drama-free, the total opposite of Lily. That's when she lost it. She went on a full rant, telling anyone who would listen that Ethan had betrayed her, that he was already seeing this woman before they split, that he was fake and a cheater. But no one cared because everyone knew the truth. Ethan had tried, he had put up with her nonsense for too long, and now he was thriving. Meanwhile, my business was exploding. After the viral wedding disaster, I had so many new clients I could barely keep up. My name was out there, and suddenly I was booking bigger weddings, bigger budgets, even a celebrity client. Lily saw all of it. She knew she could have had a perfect wedding if she had just respected my boundaries. Suddenly, she started telling people exactly that. She admitted that she should have paid me and that she made a mistake, but at this point, no one felt sorry for her. She had burned every bridge. Then came her final act of desperation. She reached out to me one last time, acting sweet, as if she just wanted to talk things out. I already knew why she was really there: she needed money, she needed help. I looked her in the eye and repeated the words that had haunted